I've been an MP under all three Prime Ministers, and the usual question I have is, why would anybody want to become a Prime Minister?
Hi, good morning, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're gonna chat a little bit about your life and also discuss some issues. So maybe we can start off by, what do you have for breakfast?
I had some cereal.
Okay.
I try to avoid gluten, and I try and make it as healthy as possible.
A lot of people have been seeing your weightlifting as like, you know, you're kind of like
I was worried you were going to talk about that.
Seems to be your leisure kind of like point, right? So like, how did you
I can
get
tell
into...
you it's not leisure.
Okay. So
No,
how
no.
did you get into weightlifting?
Okay, I've been asked this repeatedly, so I will repeat my answers. See, I've always exercised, and I've always emphasized the importance of exercise. It's not that I want to build up a body, it's just that I want to keep myself in some proper physique so that you can walk and you can enjoy a quality of life as you get older. And I surprised myself when I was able to carry 105 kilos, which was about 150% of my weight.
Wow.
And my favorite kind of exercise actually would be some types of cardio, because it gets yourself pumping and you feel better after that. Also, I like relaxing yoga. Where you actually lie down and do nothing. That's the best.
Is that the one that people say they fall asleep in?
Well, I do usually fall asleep.
Oh!
I think you work out the most among all of us.
I was going to ask you. I won't ask you your ages, but do you all work out?
I can't say I do regular. This is my New Year resolution.
Why do you have to wait until the new year to make a resolution? You can make the resolution anytime.
It's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
I know,
don't
it
believe in
was
New Year resolutions.
Do 10 now, Wendy. 10 push-ups.
Yeah, do 10 push-ups now.
So this is not really like related to what was asked before.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of series of question.
Yeah.
I mean, like, did you consider or would you want to be PM one day?
One doesn't consider whether one wants to be PM. It depends on the confidence that your fellow MPs have in you. I've been asked that question before on a BBC interview, and I said, I leave myself outside of that equation. I have no such desire. I hadn't thought that I would be a minister in the first place, right? It's not as if I wanted to be a minister. And when I became a minister, it's not as if you go, oh, what else can I become? If circumstances arise such that you have to do more, then it's up to you to ask whether, is that something that you want to do? But speaking for myself, I've been an MP under all three Prime Ministers. I know a little bit about how the first two worked, but I see at close quarters how this Prime Minister works. And the usual question I have is, why would anybody want to become a Prime Minister? Yeah.
It's too much hard work.
It's very intense.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
And there is no downtime. And it's collective responsibility. Ultimately, everything does go and fall on the shoulders of one person. And in the context, specifically, when you asked about me, we have all met and we have chosen Lawrence as the next person, best suited. You need to move on, the next phase of leadership. Yeah.
Right now, in the day and age that we live in, there's a lot of talk about cancel culture. So I wanted to know whether ministers themselves are afraid of cancel culture.
I hadn't thought about it like that. I mean, my approach to cancel culture, and I've spoken about it a few times, is this. Take the real world. In the real world, we won't allow 5 people to come together and beat you up. Likewise, we should allow free speech. People should be able to speak what they think without the fear that they are going to be lynched virtually. In discussing public policy, often it is important to be clear, precise, and tough. And if somebody is putting forward arguments which are flawed, I think the flaws have to be exposed so that the public will have a better understanding, because otherwise, if those arguments succeed, it's the public who suffer. You can demolish arguments, you can be very tough, But you cannot, I think, you shouldn't allow lynching. That's my primary point, and that's something that I've been thinking about for a while.
Yeah, I think we brought cancel culture up as a topic also because you've mentioned in some past interviews that you're thinking of putting it into legislature, right? Yeah, I mean, I understand that that's very far in the works. So I think recently there was quite a lot of discussion on the death penalty, right? With Nagantaran's death. So I think we just wanted to also ask whether you were ever afraid of yourself getting cancelled.
I didn't think of it in those terms. I didn't think of it in those terms. I don't think I was cancelled. I think, people put forward their views. There are people who genuinely hold the view that the death penalty ought not to be imposed. If you ask me, I have said many times, I don't like the death penalty either. And who can like the death penalty?
Yeah.
You do out of necessity because you think it's in the broader interest of society, because it saves more lives.
And there haven't been any like personal attacks on you.
I'm sure there would have been personal attacks.
Right. And how do you cope with that?
Whenever people disagree, there are various ways of expressing their disagreement. Some disagree on ideas, some disagree with you as a person. I think if you're in public life as I am, you have to assess, because you mustn't dismiss what people say, because they might be right, or they might have a valid perspective even though overall they are not right. Even when they talk about me personally, there may be a point of view which is valid. It's not as if I know everything about myself.
So do you read the comments yourself?
I don't have the time to read the comments myself, but somebody will help me to collate and put it together. But often, immediately, it's also apparent that they're disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing. There's a group like that. So you must learn to ignore those.
What was one feedback that you actually got from the public and you thought, oh, that's valid, and you actually worked on it?
There have been several over the years. There was a man who was convicted for behaving inappropriately, but he had also shown the kid pornographic stuff. A lady wrote to me to say she felt that the punishments were totally inadequate. We have fairly stiff penalties, but I looked at it in detail and I realized perhaps there was a lacuna in the penalties for showing young children pornographic stuff. So I called her in, I met with her in my office in Home Affairs. I tried to understand her perspective, and I factored that in, and the law was changed. Okay. That's one example. Right. And recently, when we talked about 377A and the family issues, the feedback was very important on both sides. How Singaporeans felt about families, what they wanted protected, how they felt about 377A. So there was a lot of discussion. Religious groups, LGBT groups, but also ordinary Singaporeans who don't have any specific agenda or interest, but who have viewpoints. The approach I took is you have to be empathetic to the different points of view. The people who say on the LGBT side who felt that they have been marginalized and this criminalization is wrong, and it's not just a logical point of view, it's how they feel, and you have to understand and you have to acknowledge it. Emotion does come in, but emotion doesn't influence the policy making. Policy making has to be very rational and objective. But I am emotional. There are many other issues that I feel very strongly about. You can't be doing this job unless you have feelings. And there have been remarks personally as well. This is coming across as too fierce and so on, and that's not my intention.
People say that, is it?
Some people have said
in Parliament?
I guess in Parliament. And I said that wasn't my intention. I was just trying to be, very clear and focused on my speech. I mean, that's my training as a lawyer for over 20 years, to pick apart issues, look at them logically, put them out, and expose the flaws in the argument.
Do you like that impression or reputation of yourself? being
No,
fierce?
no, because it is not something I try to create, and it's not an impression that I want to create.
Okay.
I just want to be accurate, honest,
Yeah.
and direct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we've also watched like your speeches in Parliament and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have to ever take a position in Parliament and it sort of went against your own personal beliefs or your personal take on certain things?
There was a law long ago that imposed compulsory jail term if you had a tenant who was unauthorized immigrant. I mean, I'm putting it in.
Like you're hiding a...
Yeah, you're not expressly hiding. You let him become a tenant. You don't realize. You're not even aware. But then he is an illegal immigrant. You could be jailed.
Right.
I said so at that time that I didn't agree with this. Look, if there was something that I really disagreed with, then I have to ask myself whether I should be part of the outfit in the first place. Because we, as a cabinet minister, you take collective responsibility for everything.
When you started, did you ever feel a bit of like imposter syndrome? Like, why am I here? Because I think even you have mentioned multiple times that it was never, your goal or whatever to become minister, right?
The term imposter syndrome was not in my mind. I didn't know such a term existed previously.
Oh, okay.
When I became an MP at 29. I was a young English-speaking lawyer, 4 years into practice. And suddenly I was a member of parliament, thrown into a constituency which was primarily dialect speaking, Hokkien. And even the residents get an attack of panic when they see how young the person looks. And I did ask myself, hey, am I cut out for this? Can I do this job? But I think, on the other hand, people had enough faith that the party would have chosen a person who they think can do the job. Because this was a question I asked the party before they fielded me. Are you sure you think I can do this? Given my age. They say, well, we have assessed you. We think you can do it. Right. And, over time, I got their confidence.
Yeah, no, because I mean, all of us are quite early into our careers, right?
Yes.
So I think it's also something that we struggle with.
Yeah.
In OGS here, I lead a team. And I think
Yeah.
like when I first came in, it was also like, whoa, at the time when I joined, I was like, whoa, I'm 26. Can I really be leading a team when I hardly know what I'm doing in my job, right? So I think it's something interesting that you brought up that, you trust that the people who have put you in that position also know that you have the ability to do it. So I think it's yeah.
Don't dwell on things that didn't go right. Just, focus, try and learn as quickly as you can and do your best. In politics in particular, what matters most is sincerity and hard work. So even if you don't know, if you are sincere, people will know that you are sincere. If you are hardworking and you are working for them, they will also know that. That will overcome most barriers.
So you say you've been in Parliament for about 30 over years. What was the most difficult part? And was there a time where you almost left or quit politics?
No. It was tough in the sense that, when I became an MP, I had a career that was just starting out. And it was a very intense career. I was in court almost every day. And I had a very young family. I mean, my children were born after I became an MP. So they were growing up. And at the same time, the constituency, you have to spend the time, you have to work hard. So there were three major things. And to juggle all three was not easy.
So the start was the hardest part for you?
I would say that continued because as my career progressed, I became busier and busier and busier. Right?
Then how?
And the children sort of don't grow up in 1 year. It takes 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So it is. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Was this something you had to give up?
Time with the family. I wish I could have spent more time. Obviously.
Then in that case, how do you deal with stress?
I meditate.
Okay.
I think that's important. You need to center yourself. You have to keep going back to what are you doing this for? You have a major issue on which you want to make a decision. But at the end of the day, if you have made your decision after considering the different perspectives, I mean, you're not God, you're not infallible. But subject to that, have you done all of that? Then you just have to put it aside and move on.
I'll ask a more like personal question where you can choose to answer or not. When was the last time you cried?
This year, actually, which has just gone,
Okay.
I choked up at the funeral of a grassroots leader who had worked with me for many years.
Okay.
I was lucky to have very good mentors when I was in private practice, when I started out my career. All three of them have passed away in the last few years, and I delivered the eulogies in all three.
Yeah.
One occasion that many people have noticed because it's on YouTube is when Nisoon held our remembrance event in 2015 for the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. We had a very public event. This was just before the funeral, and I openly cried on stage as I was speaking. I just couldn't control. So there have been occasions like that. You've just asked me if I sat down and thought about it. I'm sure I can think of more occasions.
Okay.
Snag. No, I don't know. Okay, I'm kidding. There's this term called like snag, which is sensitive new age guy.
What's the best advice you have on dealing with doubts and something you would like to share with the young generation today?
When you have had to deal with as many things as I've had, you work it out.
Okay.
Well, you either get broken or you work it out.
Okay.
Yeah. So my advice is to take a path that will not break you.
If you couldn't be a lawyer or politician, what would you do?
Well,
Weightlifting.
no, I don't have a career in weightlifting. What I like travel. So I would have liked to have been traveling around, basically be a travel bum and writing about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully I would have saved up enough
Yeah.
from my career as a lawyer to, do
Travel.
that. Yeah.
What's a place that you want to go and you haven't been?
I've been to Africa, but I would like to go back to Africa quite a bit. I would like to go to South America. I would like to go to Antarctica.
Right.
I would like to go to the Scandinavian countries a bit more.
Would you want to like scale a mountain, that sort of things?
I once had plans to scale a mountain, but I think it's lesser in my priorities.
Yeah, I want to go Antarctica also. But I heard the route there, the cost, it's very high.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
So
going,
in all
can
of
let me
these,
know.
that's a function of cost. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minister, for joining us today and
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
It was fun.
That's encouraging.
Come again soon.
Yeah, we gain a lot of insights.
Yeah, a lot of insights into your whole journey, like as a politician, even your own personal life as well. So if you enjoyed hearing these stories, do remember to give us a thumbs up. You can like, share, and subscribe as well. If you would like to, you can also leave comments in the comment section below. A minister said that he would read them.
I will have them read.
Yes. So till the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.